in one of Doha's biggest supermarkets, and these shelves that used to be stacked full of Saudi imports, but now they've got products from Turkey, Iran, Oman and Morocco, and even Qatar itself, like the sunflower oil here. Now, Qatar has had to use more of its products during the course of the blockade. It's also had to diversify its trade routes, make more use of its seaport, and also tap into its sovereign wealth fund to inject billions of dollars into its banks after blockading countries' banks pulled that money out. Now, the IMF says the economy here is set to grow by 2.6%. So all of those measures have really taken the sting out of the blockade for the economy. And as it drags into its second year, Qatar is in a much better position.
Now, for more on this, let's cross to London to speak to Allison Wood, who's a control risk senior consultant. Thanks so much for speaking to us on Money Talks, Allison. Now, Qatar's foreign minister, he says the country is stronger than it was a year ago. What do you think?
I think that Qatar has managed to really manage the blockade quite well over the past year. There were some obviously immediate effects that came with the restrictions that were put in place by the blockading or boycotting countries. But I think we've seen that it's been able to establish new trading routes with countries like Turkey, Iran, Oman, India, and even China, which has really been able to help it maintain that supply chain. And it's increasingly looking for new opportunities for investment and trade partnerships outside of the GCC.
So if we were to think in terms of winners and losers, I'm looking at one media report that I saw today. It said Qatar has weathered the storm and it's won the Saudi-led blockade. So would you agree that it's won?
Well, I do think that certainly Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Bahrain and Egypt have been unable to achieve their objectives, which was to really make Qatar fall in line with its foreign policy. And I think Qatar has really managed sort of the public relations aspect of this conflict really well, particularly in Washington, D.C., where it spent millions, if not billions of dollars on building its relationships there as well, which it saw as being key in sort of the resolution of the dispute.
And Allison, realistically, how much longer can this blockade last? We've heard that the IMF says the GDP will grow from 2% to 2.7%, but how much longer?
I think it could easily last months and maybe even another year and beyond. I mean, we've seen a real intransigence on both sides of the disputes. Neither side really has any great incentives to compromise at this point, and we haven't seen a lot of leadership from external powers like the U.S., for example, or UK to really step in and force the parties to compromise. So I think we could remain in sort of this as a new normal for quite some time.
And that new normal, what effect, and we saw in the report from my colleague, that new normal, what effect long-term would that have on ordinary people that are living there?
I think the day-to-day sort of effect has really been moderated by some of the things that your colleague mentioned, more domestic production, new trade routes. I think, though, you know, there is some question as the World Cup draws closer in 2022, will all of that be enough to manage sort of supply chains and preparations for that tournament as it draws closer? So I think that will be one thing to watch over the coming years as that big event that the economy hinges so much on comes closer.
And just to broaden it up a bit, the Qatar foreign minister also called the blockade reckless and ill-considered. Do you think it was?
I do think that it was short-sighted in the sense that there wasn't a clear sort of long-term plan for the alternative if Qatar did not just sort of fall in line with the demands that the UAE and Saudi Arabia made upon it. And I think there was a recognition that this could easily kind of fall into the stasis that it has. And I think the problem now is that you don't see a lot of willingness on either side to compromise, and also that the states have been unsuccessful in really being able to economically pressure Qatar, in part because it has a very sort of stable fiscal situation between its foreign currency reserves and the sovereign wealth fund. It made it difficult for those restrictions that they put in place to really be effective to the point of changing policy.
Allison, thanks so much for your analysis. That was Allison Wood, a control risks senior consultant, speaking to us from London.